Henry Smith, the determined and relentless magnate, strode through the long, imposing marble corridors of Smith Enterprises. His steps were firm, yet his mind wandered far away, enveloped in a storm of worries and strategic calculations. The large windows of the corridor framed the city skyline, reflecting the grandeur and pressure of the empire he had built. The company was on the verge of an unprecedented expansion, with delicate negotiations underway for the acquisition of other major companies that could reshape his domain in the global market. Every document, every meeting, every decision was a thread in the delicate fabric of success he sought to meticulously weave. However, his concentration was often broken by the weight of grief he carried. His mother, the revered matriarch who had always been his greatest support, had passed away just a few weeks ago. She was his advisor, the voice of reason in moments of doubt, and her absence left a vast emptiness. As he walked, Henry was approached by his personal assistant, Michael, who carried a stack of reports and projections. "Mr. Smith, we've reviewed the projections for the next quarter and everything indicates that we're on track for Thursday's meeting. We also have a video conference with the lawyers in Zurich at 3, said Michael, trying to keep up with Henry's brisk pace. Henry stopped, running his hand through his graying hair, clearly under the weight of expectation. "And the reports from the finance department? We need to ensure every number is correct. We can't afford mistakes, Michael, not now. They are being reviewed again, as you requested." "We're leaving nothing to chance," Michael replied, noting down another task on his tablet. As they continued along the corridor, Henry's phone rang. He saw the name Ellen light up on the screen, and his heart tightened. Taking a deep breath, he answered. "Ellen, I really don't have much time right now," he began, trying to keep his voice steady. "I know, Henry, but we need to sort out some things about the children. I will be moving to Europe in a month and—" Henry interrupted, the frustration evident in his voice. "Ellen, now is not a good time. We're in the middle of a major expansion, and every minute of my day is accounted for." "But Henry, they are your children. You need to make space for them in your life, no matter how big your company is," Ellen countered, her voice mixing concern and reprimand. "Let's discuss this over the weekend." "Please," said Henry, hanging up the phone with an exasperated sigh. Resuming his walk, Henry felt the weight of his responsibilities multiply. Business, family, loss. The balance of his life seemed dangerously tilted. He needed clarity and focus, now more than ever. When the elevator opened, he stepped in, preparing himself for another long ascent to his office on the top floor. As the doors closed, he closed his eyes for a moment, trying to find within himself the strength that his mother always believed he had. In this momentary silence, the weight of the world seemed more bearable. Henry was ready for another day, no matter the storms he needed to face. As the elevator ascended, Henry remained engrossed in his thoughts until the door opened on the 10th floor, and a figure entered. It was Amy, the building's cleaner. With a welcoming smile and an energy that contrasted with the corporate environment, she greeted Henry, who was usually surrounded by executives and businessmen. "Hello, Mr. Smith. Sorry to bother you, I was just heading to clean this floor," said Amy with a sweet voice, squeezing into a corner with her cleaning cart. Surprised to be recognized so casually, Henry responded with a light nod. "Ah, yes, of course. Amy, right? I've seen you around here a few times. How are you?" "I'm good, thank you. And you, sir?" "I hope your day is proving productive," Amy replied, her eyes reflecting genuine curiosity. Henry managed a tired smile. "Productive, yes, but also long and challenging. It's days like these that test us, isn't it?" Amy agreed, shifting slightly to make Henry more comfortable. "I suppose so. Life doesn't stop testing us. But I heard that you're expanding the company. It must be an exciting time for Smith Enterprises." Henry looked at her, impressed by her perception. "Yes, it's a significant phase. But it also brings many concerns. And you, Amy? How did you end up working here?" "Well, life has its twists and turns," began Amy, with a reflective sigh. "I was studying in another city, but had to come back to take care of my mother. She fell ill, and I'm all she has. This job, well, it pays the bills and allows me to be close to her." The sincerity in Amy's words touched Henry in a way he hadn't expected. The young woman before him not only exhibited maturity beyond her years, but also a sense of duty and familial love that Henry deeply respected. "That's very admirable," said Henry, his voice laden with respect. "It's not easy balancing personal responsibilities with professional ones. Maintaining that strength, it's a rare quality." Amy smiled, grateful for the empathy. "Thank you, Mr. Smith. I believe we all have our battles, don't we? Some just aren't visible to the naked eye." The elevator emitted a soft signal as it approached the top floor. Henry felt that this casual conversation revealed layers of a personality that deserved more than just passing acknowledgement. Amy was not just a cleaner, she was a woman of substance, facing life with a grace that many of his executive colleagues lacked. "You have a very mature outlook for someone so young," commented Henry, as the elevator doors opened. "Ah, life taught me early, Mr. Smith. Sometimes, we have no choice but to grow up fast," Amy responded, preparing to exit on the floor designated for cleaning. Henry stepped out of the elevator, still processing the conversation. "Amy, it was a pleasure talking to you. I hope we have more conversations like this." "I hope so too, Mr. Smith. Have a great day." Amy waved as she pushed her cart out of the elevator. Watching her move away, Henry felt a spark of something different, a true human connection amidst the cynicism of the corporate world. This brief interaction had marked more than just the end of an elevator ride. It had planted a seed of curiosity and respect in Henry's heart for a person he barely knew. As the elevator doors closed behind him, and he resumed his journey to the top floor, Henry was subconsciously aware that this casual encounter might be the prelude to something more significant for both him and Amy. Her simplicity and wisdom lingered in his thoughts as he braced himself for the complexities of the day ahead. After the revealing conversation with Amy, Henry arrived at his office, still reflecting on the young cleaner's remarkable qualities. The atmosphere on the top floor was oppressively silent, broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioning and the occasional click of keyboards. Waiting for him was Hudson, the partner who shared responsibility for the company's major decisions but also personified a constant source of tension for Henry. Hudson, noticing Henry's arrival, stood up from his desk with a folder of documents in hand. His face was stern, a clear sign that he was bringing important news. "Henry, finally," said Hudson, approaching with a calculatedly calm expression. "I've been reviewing the last details of the acquisition proposal. I believe we're ready to move forward. Have you looked at the financial reports I sent you?" Henry, still somewhat distracted, nodded as he walked to his own desk. "Yes, Hudson, I've seen them, but I still have some concerns. We're moving very quickly, and—" "Caution, Henry. At this stage," Hudson interrupted, almost laughing. "You've never been one to hesitate. Remember, opportunities like this don't come around every day. The company we're acquiring is in a vulnerable position. It's the perfect time for us." Henry looked at Hudson, weighing his words. Hudson's business instincts were sharp, but his approach often bordered on the reckless. "That's exactly what worries me, Hudson. I don't want our expansion to be seen as unbridled opportunism. We have a reputation to maintain." Hudson shrugged, clearly impatient. "Reputation doesn't pay dividends, Henry. And believe me, our shareholders are more interested in financial outcomes than in the ethical nuances of the acquisition." Their conversation was interrupted by Henry's phone ringing. He hesitated, looking at the caller ID, before answering. It was a quick call, but enough to divert his attention. When he hung up, Hudson was already standing, impatience evident in every line of his body. "Henry, we need to be decisive. If you have any doubts, we need to resolve them now. Time is not on our side. I understand your concerns, Hudson, and I'm not dismissing your suggestions, Henry replied, his voice carrying a weight of responsibility. Let's proceed, but with additional analysis. I don't want any surprises. Hudson seemed satisfied with this concession, though reluctantly. Very well. I'll prepare everything for a final review tomorrow. I hope that eases your mind. As the afternoon stretched into evening and the office began to empty, Henry felt the weight of the day pressing on his shoulders. He decided it was time to go home. Walking towards the elevator, he pondered Hudson's words and the conversation he had with Amy. The complexity of his thoughts was interrupted when the elevator doors opened and he saw Amy again, this time not in her work uniform but in casual clothes. She was alone in the elevator, and her presence surprised Henry. "Amy, I didn't expect to see you here at this hour," he commented, stepping into the elevator. "Oh, I had some things to finish. And sometimes the night is quieter for working," explained Amy, with a shy smile. "Besides, I like to enjoy the calm." Henry nodded, once again impressed by her calm and thoughtful demeanor. "I understand that. Calm is rare in our days, isn't it?" "Exactly," Amy replied. "Sometimes, we just need a moment to breathe." As the elevator descended, Henry watched Amy, perceiving her in a new light, not just as an employee, but as a person with layers of depth that he was just beginning to recognize. And as the doors opened again, taking them back to the ground floor, Henry knew that his interactions with Amy were far from mere coincidences of daily life. These brief encounters were turning into something he couldn't fully define yet, but would certainly explore. The soft light from the lamps illuminated the underground parking lot of Smith Enterprises, casting long shadows that stretched across the cold concrete. Henry and Amy walked side by side toward their respective cars after their unexpected conversation in the elevator. The night had brought a pleasant coolness, breaking the heat of the day and providing a more conducive environment for deep conversations. "Do you always stay this late, Amy?" asked Henry, observing how she maneuvered her cleaning cart with a familiarity that denoted skill. "Not always, Mr. Smith. But when my mother has a bad day, I prefer to work at night. That way, I can spend the day with her," explained Amy, stopping next to her car, a modest vehicle that showed clear signs of frequent use. Henry listened intently, each word increasing his respect for her. "Is your mother ill?" "Yes, she has a chronic condition that has worsened recently. It's been tough, but we're managing it. That's why I came back here," Amy shared, the sincerity in her voice reflecting the seriousness of her situation. "It must be very hard to handle all this alone," commented Henry, his expression laden with empathy. Amy smiled sadly. "It is, but she's my mother. She always took care of me, now it's my turn to take care of her. And besides, she likes to hear about my day. She says it makes her feel active again, even if she's just hearing about my adventures cleaning offices." Henry chuckled lightly. "Adventures, huh? I bet you have many stories." "Oh, more than you might think. Each room has its own saga, I suppose," joked Amy, unlocking her car. As he prepared to say goodbye, Henry hesitated, an idea forming in his mind. "Amy, have you ever thought about doing something beyond cleaning? I mean, you obviously have the capacity for more." Amy looked at Henry, surprised by the question. "Well, I had other plans before. You know, my mother's situation. I was actually studying business administration." "That's impressive," Henry stated, his admiration evident. "Amy, I have a proposal for you. Have you considered the possibility of being a personal assistant? In my office." Amy was visibly shocked, her keys jingling in her hand that paused in the air. "Personal assistant? I don't know what to say, Mr. Smith. I mean, I'm just the cleaner." Henry gently interrupted. "No, Amy, you are clearly much more than that. Your empathy, your dedication, your drive. These are qualities I don't see in many of my top-level employees. I think you could do so much more, and I would be willing to help." Amy bit her lip, thoughtful. That would be such a big change. I would need to think about it." "Of course, take your time. But think about it. It could be a good opportunity for you, and I truly believe you would bring something special to the team." Bidding farewell with a wave, Henry got into his car, his mind already occupied with plans and possibilities. As he drove home, Amy's words echoed in his head, and he knew that offering her a better position was the right decision. Not just for his company, but to help someone who clearly deserved a chance to shine. As the buildings of the city passed by him, lit against the dark night, Henry felt a rare sense of hope and purpose. He was doing something good, something that really mattered. And this, he knew, was just the beginning of a new journey, both for him and for Amy. Dawn had barely touched the gray-toned skies above the city when Henry arrived at Smith Enterprises. His mind was brimming with plans and decisions, excited about the prospect of change that loomed not only for his company but also for the life of a young worker who had deeply impressed him. Without hesitation, as soon as his watch marked the start of the workday, he asked the receptionist to call Amy to his office. While waiting, Henry organized his papers, trying to appear calm and collected, but the truth was he felt a certain anxiety. He wanted to do this right, to ensure that Amy understood the seriousness and potential of the opportunity being offered. Amy knocked lightly on the door before entering, her expression mixing curiosity with a hint of concern. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Smith?" she asked, pausing at the door with a hesitant stance. "Yes, Amy, please come in and sit down," said Henry, indicating the chair in front of his large oak desk. As she sat, he continued, "I've thought a lot about our conversation last night." Amy nodded, clearly trying to read the intentions behind Henry's formality. "Yes, I've thought a lot too," she admitted, nervously wringing her hands. "I'll get straight to the point," began Henry, wanting to ease the tension. "Amy, I would like to offer you a position here in the office, as my personal assistant. It's a job that will come with more responsibilities, of course, but also with better pay and more flexible hours, which I think could help you with taking care of your mother." The surprise was evident on Amy's face. Her eyes widened, and for a moment she was speechless. "Mr. Smith, that's incredible, but I really don't have experience being a personal assistant. What if I can't meet the expectations?" Henry smiled, trying to convey confidence. "Amy, I wouldn't have made this offer if I didn't believe you are capable. You have a natural talent for dealing with people, and your problem-solving ability is evident. Plus, we will provide training. You won't be alone in this." Amy bit her lip, pondering. After a moment, she lifted her head, her decision clear in her determined eyes. "Okay, Mr. Smith, I accept. I want to try. It's an incredible opportunity, and I would be foolish not to take it." "Excellent." Henry extended his hand across the table, and Amy shook it firmly, sealing the new chapter that was beginning in their lives. "We'll start with some basic orientation after lunch. And, Amy, welcome to the team." "Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you for believing in me," said Amy, a glow of enthusiasm now visible in her eyes. As Amy left the office, with a new posture of confidence, Henry felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Not only was he helping someone advance in life, but he was also strengthening his team in a way that could only bring benefits to everyone involved. Reflecting on the change he had just initiated, Henry knew that the coming weeks would be challenging, but also incredibly rewarding. He now prepared to inform Hudson about the new addition to the team, anticipating the reactions it might provoke. After Amy had accepted the new position with a mix of enthusiasm and nervousness, Henry knew he needed to inform Hudson about the change. Sitting in his office, surrounded by papers and plans, he awaited the arrival of his partner, who always had an air of urgency in his steps. Hudson entered abruptly, carrying a folder of documents under his arm. His expression was serious, his eyebrows furrowed in an intensity he reserved for matters of great importance. "Henry, here are the financial reports and contracts for tomorrow's meeting." We need to make sure everything is perfect, Hudson said, placing the heavy folder on the table with a significant thud. Thank you, Hudson. But before we discuss that, there's something I need to share, Henry began, carefully watching his partner's reaction. Hudson, who had started to flip through the papers, stopped and looked at Henry, a wrinkle of concern marking his forehead. What is it? Any problems with the expansion? Nothing like that. It's about the team. I've decided to appoint Amy, our cleaner, as my new personal assistant, Henry revealed, straightforward. Hudson's reaction was immediate and visible. His face hardened, and he shut the folder with more force than necessary. Amy, the cleaner. Henry, this is a mistake. She doesn't have the qualifications needed for a position of this caliber. Why her? Henry maintained his calm. She has shown great potential and intelligence. Plus, she's already familiar with the environment and the team. It will be a good fit, you'll see. Hudson shook his head, clearly displeased. I hope you know what you're doing, he said, his voice laden with skepticism. But let's focus on what really matters now. The rest of the conversation revolved around the details of the upcoming meeting, but Henry noticed the coldness with which Hudson now treated the matter of Amy. Something about Hudson's reaction didn't seem right, and it left him uneasy. Later that day, Amy, who was adjusting to her new role, was trying to find the file room to organize some documents Henry had asked her to check. With her head full of new responsibilities and information, she became confused and opened the door to the private conference room, where Hudson was on the phone. Don't worry, he has no idea what's about to happen. And with the new assistant, she's just a distraction, easy to manipulate, Amy heard Hudson say, his voice low and conspiratorial. Amy quickly retreated, closing the door carefully. Her heart was racing. She knew she shouldn't have heard that, but now that she did, the weight of the information was too heavy to ignore. Hudson was planning something against Henry, something potentially destructive. Caught in a whirlwind of emotions and uncertainties, Amy knew she needed to be cautious with her next actions. She needed evidence or more information before she could alert Henry without seeming like just a paranoid employee. Meanwhile, Henry, oblivious to the conspiracy forming right under his nose, continued his work, confident in his team's ability to move the company forward. The trust he placed in Hudson and the new chance he was giving Amy might be tested sooner than he imagined. As the days unfolded, Amy began to feel more comfortable in her new role, despite the weight of the discovery she had made. With every step she took in the office, she wondered about Hudson's true intentions and what he might be planning against Henry. She knew she needed concrete evidence before she could make any accusations, but time seemed to be running out. On a seemingly calm morning, Hudson called an urgent meeting. Henry, Amy, and several senior team members gathered in the conference room, where Hudson presented what he called disturbing evidence. As everyone knows, integrity in our workplace is fundamental, began Hudson, projecting a video on the large screen. The images showed a female figure, vaguely recognizable as Amy, supposedly rummaging through drawers in different offices. Amy's stomach churned as she watched the images. She knew she had never committed such acts, but the images had been manipulated so convincingly that they seemed real. These videos were brought to my attention this morning. It's unfortunate, but it appears that our new personal assistant has been using her access for less ethical purposes, Hudson declared, casting a severe look towards Amy. Henry, watching the images, felt a mix of shock and disbelief. This must be a mistake, he said, his voice unsteady. Amy, is this true? Amy, completely astonished, shook her head vigorously. No, Mr. Smith. I would never do such a thing. These images, they have to be wrong. Someone is trying to frame me. Henry looked at Hudson, seeking some kind of explanation. Hudson, are you sure these recordings are authentic? This doesn't seem like something Amy would do. Hudson, with an expression of false sadness, replied, Henry, I understand this is hard, but the videos don't lie. We need to think about the safety and integrity of our company. Unfortunately, This means making tough decisions. With the room silent and all eyes on him, Henry felt the weight of his position. Reluctantly, he turned to Amy. "Amy, under these circumstances, I have no choice but to ask you to step away from your duties, at least until we can investigate this further." Amy, with tears in her eyes, simply nodded, too shaken to argue. She knew the accusations were false, but the evidence presented was convincing. Leaving the room under the gaze of her colleagues, she felt a mix of shame and anger. After Amy left the room, Henry remained seated, his distrust towards Hudson growing with each passing moment. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was profoundly wrong. "I need time to process this," Henry finally said, more to himself than to the others. He wasn't convinced of the charges against Amy, but the evidence presented by Hudson was difficult to ignore. With Amy sidelined and the meeting concluded, Henry sat alone, contemplating the next steps. He needed to discover the truth, not just for the good of the company, but also to clear Amy's name if she really was innocent as he suspected. As Henry pondered his options, Amy, outside the building, took a deep breath, determined to find out who was behind the setup and why. She was not ready to give up, and her fight was just beginning. In the days following Amy's dismissal, the tension in the Smith Enterprises office was palpable. Hudson, for his part, seemed incredibly focused, almost frantic, in his preparations for the imminent major meeting that would decide the company's future. With Amy out of the way, he moved with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, organizing documents, coordinating with lawyers, and consulting financial experts. Henry watched Hudson's actions with a growing sense of distrust. Despite the evidence presented, something inside him couldn't accept that Amy was guilty. He began to investigate on his own, reviewing security recordings and documents related to Amy's case. Meanwhile, Amy was not inactive. Though shaken, she dedicated herself to uncovering the truth behind her accusation. She knew someone had manipulated the evidence against her and strongly suspected Hudson. With the help of a friend who worked in technology, she was able to access backups of the original security recordings, which clearly showed the manipulation of the images Hudson had used. Armed with this evidence, Amy felt a mix of relief and anger. She knew she needed to confront Hudson, but also understood that she needed to be strategic. She decided that the best opportunity would be during the big meeting, where all stakeholders would be present. On the day of the meeting, Hudson was in the midst of presenting his final argument for the acquisition of a company on the brink of bankruptcy. With a confident smile, he distributed documents that, according to him, would guarantee the bright future of Smith Enterprises. It was at this moment that Amy entered the conference room, interrupting the presentation. All eyes turned to her, surprised and confused. "Henry, I need you to see this," Amy said, her voice firm despite her nervousness. She handed a tablet to Henry, which contained the original videos and a detailed analysis of the manipulations. Henry, surprised by Amy's sudden appearance, looked at the evidence. His face turned pale as the reality of what he was seeing settled in. Is this true?" he asked, looking from Amy to Hudson. Hudson, realizing that his deception was about to be exposed, tried to maintain his composure. "Amy, this is absurd. You're trying to sabotage this meeting because you're bitter about being fired." Amy remained calm, her voice laden with determination. "No, Hudson. I am innocent, and these proofs show not only my innocence but also your plan. You manipulated the evidence against me and were planning to benefit from the bankruptcy of the company we are about to acquire." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone in the room processed Amy's accusations and the implications of what that meant. Henry stood up, holding the tablet as if it were a piece of a puzzle that he finally understood. "Hudson, if this is true, you've betrayed everyone's trust in this room," Henry said, his voice full of disappointment and anger. The confrontation that followed was tense and full of revelations. Amy exposed not just the truth behind her accusation but also details of Hudson's plan that would risk not just the company, but all its employees. As the truth came to light, Hudson tried to defend himself, but the evidence was irrefutable. Henry, now fully aware of the extent of his partner's betrayal, knew that tough and immediate decisions needed to be made. The conference room was in absolute silence, all eyes fixed on Henry, Amy, and Hudson as the truth unfolded like a theatrical play. Henry, standing, looked at Hudson with an expression of deep disappointment and frustration. Amy, by his side, remained steadfast, although the weight of the situation was evident in her posture. "Hudson, I need to confess something," began Henry, his voice firm but filled with contained emotion. "I had my suspicions about your intentions from the beginning. When Amy was accused, something didn't fit. That's why I made the decision to distance her, not because of the accusations, but to protect her and allow her to investigate without raising your suspicions." Hudson, realizing the room was against him, tried to defend himself. "Henry, you're being irrational. Are you really going to believe the words of a former cleaner over your longtime partner?" Henry, however, was not willing to let Hudson manipulate the narrative. "It's not about who says what, Hudson, but what the evidence shows. And the evidence is clear and indisputable. You manipulated the evidence against Amy and planned a scheme that could harm the entire company." Amy, though relieved by Henry's acknowledgement of her innocence, still felt shaken by the magnitude of what she had discovered. "I just wanted the truth," she said, looking directly at Hudson. "I couldn't let you destroy everything that so many people have worked so hard to build." Hudson, now clearly desperate, tried one last tactic. "Henry, think about what you're doing. If this goes public, our company will be ruined. Do you really want to risk everything based on some supposed evidence?" Henry looked at Hudson, each word heavy with the decision already made. "What I don't want is to continue a partnership based on distrust and manipulation. We built this company on integrity and transparency, and I will not allow that to be compromised." With Henry's decision clear, he turned to the other team members, who had followed the entire situation unfold. "We will have to take legal action against Hudson and conduct a thorough audit of all recent transactions. We need to ensure that there is nothing else hidden that can harm us in the future." Hudson, realizing there was no way out, shook his head, defeated. "You'll regret this, Henry. You're making a big mistake." As Hudson was escorted out of the room by security, Henry felt a weight lift from his shoulders, although he knew the coming days would be crucial for the company's recovery. Amy, now completely vindicated, remained by Henry's side. Together, they would face the repercussions of the confrontation, knowing that despite the challenges ahead, truth and integrity prevailed. The atmosphere, though tense, had an air of renewal and a sense of restored justice that only solidified trust in Henry's leadership. Henry's office felt like a battlefield after Hudson's departure, escorted by the security guards. The tension in the air was palpable, and everyone present seemed to absorb the weight of the events that had just unfolded. Henry, still standing, appeared as a tragic figure, his expression marked by a mix of victory and desolation. Before Hudson was completely removed from the room, he stopped abruptly, as if a sudden thought had struck him. Turning to face Henry one last time, his eyes burned with a mix of defeat and challenge. "Henry, you think you know everything, but there's more." "I wasn't acting alone," he said, his voice tense and low. Henry, already at the limit of his patience, responded firmly, "What do you mean, Hudson?" Hudson laughed bitterly. "Ellen, your ex-wife. She was in on this. She wanted you to fall just as much as I did. Ellen planned every step with me." The room fell into absolute silence. Amy looked at Henry, whose expression transformed from surprise to shock, and finally, to cold clarity. "Ellen. But why?" "Revenge. Henry. She never got over the divorce, and the idea of seeing you lose everything. Well, that seemed like a sweet payback for her," Hudson explained, each word poisoned by his own sense of betrayal. Henry felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Hudson's betrayal was one thing, but to know that Ellen, the woman with whom he had shared years of his life and had children, was involved in this scheme was devastating. However, This new information also brought an opportunity. So you're telling me that Ellen helped orchestrate this betrayal? Do you have proof of this, Hudson? Something that can prove your claims? Henry asked, each word meticulously measured. Hudson, realizing he might use this last card to his advantage, nodded. Yes, I have emails, messages, documents that show she was behind many of the decisions. Henry took a deep breath, his inner lawyer taking the reins. If you cooperate fully and provide these proofs, I can assure you that your cooperation will be considered when we deal with the legal consequences of your actions. Hudson nodded, defeated. You'll have everything, Henry. With this revelation, Henry knew he had what he needed not only to clear his name and protect his company, but also to legally confront Ellen and prevent her from taking their children to Europe, a move he had always feared but never expected to have to face under such circumstances. As Hudson was finally removed from the room, Henry sat down, trying to process the extent of the betrayals that had been revealed. Amy approached, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. We'll get through this, Henry. You're not alone, she said, offering support that Henry now knew was more valuable than he could ever have imagined. As he prepared for the legal battle ahead, Henry also knew he would have to deal with the emotional ramifications of such a personal betrayal. The battle would be in both the courts and the heart. In the days following Hudson's tumultuous revelation, the Smith Enterprises office was immersed in an atmosphere of caution and renewal. Henry, now more determined than ever, dedicated himself to establishing a new order, focusing on restructuring and strengthening the company that had almost been destroyed by the plots of his former partner and his ex-wife. On a fresh and clear morning, Henry convened a meeting with the entire team. The spacious conference room was filled with eager employees, all curious about the future of the company and their positions within it. Starting today, we are turning an important page in the history of our company, began Henry, his voice firm and confident resonating through the room. The recent adversities have revealed not only the weaknesses in our structure, but also the strength and dedication of many of you present here. He paused, his eyes sweeping the room before continuing. Part of this new phase includes recognizing those who have demonstrated exceptional loyalty and integrity, even in the face of adverse circumstances. That is why I am more than pleased to announce that Amy will be reinstated to our team, not just returning to her role, but promoted to my trusted personal assistant. A murmur of approval swept through the room, and Amy, who stood beside Henry, felt a wave of relief and gratitude. She nodded in thanks, her expression reflecting both the pride and the responsibility she felt. Thank you, Henry. I promise to do everything in my power to help guide our company on a path of success and integrity, said Amy, her voice clear and determined. I am confident that you will be exceptional, Henry responded, giving her an encouraging smile. Furthermore, Henry continued, turning back to the team, we will implement new policies and procedures to ensure that we are never again vulnerable to internal or external manipulations. We are strengthening our security measures, reviewing our financial processes, and establishing a new ethics committee, which will include representatives from all levels of our team. The announcement was met with a mix of relief and enthusiasm. The team seemed rejuvenated by the prospect of positive changes and Henry's transparent leadership. In the following days, Amy worked side by side with Henry, helping to implement the new policies. Together, they reviewed contracts, renewed security protocols, and met with each department to ensure that Henry's vision for a safer and more ethical work environment was shared by all. As Henry and Amy worked to restore trust in the company's leadership, Henry's personal life also began to stabilize. With the evidence provided by Hudson, he was now in a stronger position to handle the legal issues involving Ellen and ensure that his children would not be unjustly taken away from him. Amid all these challenges and changes, Henry found a moment to reflect on recent events. The betrayal he faced not only tested his resilience but also reinforced his commitment to the fundamental values that had always guided his life and his company. With Amy by his side and a renewed team, he looked to the future with a new sense of purpose and determination. After weeks of turmoil and changes, Henry's office was finally beginning to regain a sense of normality. With the dust settled, Henry found himself walking through the quiet corridors of the company after hours, a habit he had recently resumed as a way to find clarity and peace. That day, he headed to the small room he had transformed into a memorial space for his mother, where photos of her at different stages of her life adorned the walls, accompanied by some of her most cherished possessions. Stopping in front of one particular photograph, his mother at a family picnic, laughing with a likeness he would always remember, Henry allowed himself a moment of deep reflection. The space was quiet, save for the soft sound of his breathing and the occasional turning of a page from the photo album he was slowly leafing through. "She always knew how to find joy in the little things," Henry murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. "And she always taught me to do the same, even when everything seemed grim." Lost in thought, he didn't notice Amy enter the room quietly until she spoke softly, not wanting to startle him. "She seems to have been an incredible woman," said Amy, approaching with respect. Henry looked up, a sad smile touching his lips. "She was, Amy. And she would have loved to know that we overcame all this. She always said that adversities aren't here to stop us, but to teach us to be strong." Amy nodded, sharing in the moment of reverence. "She was right. And you are living proof of that, Henry. The way you handled everything, with Hudson, with the company. It's exactly the kind of resilience she seems to have instilled in you." Henry sighed, carefully closing the album. "I hope so. All this, it made me reflect on the legacy I want to leave. Not just a successful company, but a place that values truth, integrity, and cares for its people." "You're achieving that, Henry. We all see it," Amy responded, her tone full of admiration and respect. Encouraged by Amy's words, Henry stood up, placing the album on the shelf. "Thank you, Amy. Let's ensure this legacy continues. That we not only survive tough times, but that we thrive through them." "With you leading the way, I'm sure we will thrive," said Amy, a hopeful smile framing her words. Together, they left the room, the echo of their words mingling with the sound of their footsteps as they walked back to the heart of the company. Henry felt rejuvenated by this moment of connection with his mother's memory and strengthened by Amy's loyalty and support. Knowing that with people like her by his side, he could face any challenges the future might hold. With his mind now focused on the future, Henry began to outline new plans and ideas for the company, each reflecting the strength and resilience his mother had taught him. As the evening gently fell over the city, and as lights began to glow outside, Henry was ready to guide Smith Enterprises toward a new dawn. On a bright and promising morning, Henry and Amy gathered in the conference room, in front of a large whiteboard filled with notes and diagrams. The air was charged with a renewed energy, each word and idea being a seed for the future of Smith Enterprises. "The first order of the day is to review our code of ethics," Henry began, pointing to the document projected on the screen. "We need more robust guidelines that not only comply with the law but also promote a culture of integrity and transparency." Amy, who had prepared extensive research on best practices in the industry, added, "I completely agree, Henry. I also suggest implementing an anonymous reporting system. This could encourage employees to speak up if they see something wrong, without fear of retaliation." "Excellent idea, Amy. Let's include that. I want everyone to feel safe and supported here," Henry responded, noting down the suggestion. Continuing, they discussed the implementation of regular training on ethics and compliance, as well as orientation sessions for new employees. Henry was determined to cultivate an environment where ethics was not just a policy but a principle lived daily. "The next big step will be the restructuring of our external partnerships and alliances," Henry said, shifting the focus of the discussion. "We need to make sure that our partners share our values and ethical practices." Amy agreed, flipping through a list of current and potential partners. "I'll schedule meetings with each of them. We can assess our ethical compatibility and commitment to sustainable practices. We don't want another Hudson on our trail." Henry smiled, grateful for Amy's diligence. "And last but not least, let's review our corporate governance practices. Ensure that decisions are made with the utmost accountability and that there's always a clear audit trail. That should also include a more regular review of our internal controls, right? Amy asked, already anticipating Henry's agreement. Exactly. I want us to conduct internal audits every 6 months. And perhaps it would be prudent to bring in an external firm from time to time to ensure impartiality, he replied, already visualizing the plan in action. With the strategic plan outline in hand, both felt a mix of anticipation and determination. The work ahead was vast, but the foundation they were building would be solid and enduring. As the meeting concluded, Henry and Amy felt they were not just rebuilding but reinventing the company. The legacy of integrity and innovation they were about to leave would be the testament to their personal and professional journeys. I think we're on the right track, Amy. Thank you for being on this journey with me. Not just as my assistant, but as my partner in this rebuild, Henry said, genuinely grateful. It's a privilege, Henry. We're doing something special here, something that will last, Amy replied, sharing the sense of accomplishment. They left the conference room with a sense of duty fulfilled, ready to face the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. The company that would emerge from this process would be more resilient, ethical, and innovative, a true reflection of their new foundations. Since being promoted to personal assistant, Amy felt an increasing responsibility not only to the company but also to the surrounding community. She understood that the position she now held gave her a unique platform to promote significant changes, and she was determined to use this opportunity to the fullest. One sunny afternoon, Amy sat in the meeting room with Henry to discuss a new initiative she had been meticulously planning. Henry, I've been thinking a lot about how we can extend our influence beyond the direct business operations of the company, Amy began, unfolding a series of documents that contained the outline of her plan. I want to start a program focused on social responsibility and sustainable development here in the region. Henry, always open to ideas that could improve the company's impact on society, leaned forward, interested. That sounds promising, Amy. Tell me more about your ideas. Firstly, I'm proposing that the company start investing in local renewable energy projects. This will not only help the environment but also reinforce our image as a company that cares about a sustainable future, explained Amy, passing some charts to Henry. Excellent point. And what about community involvement? Asked Henry, examining the charts closely. Here's the second part of the plan, Amy continued, her voice full of enthusiasm. I want to establish partnerships with local schools to create educational programs that teach children about sustainability and business ethics. Additionally, we can offer internships and mentoring programs for high school and college students. Henry smiled, impressed by the depth of Amy's vision. This not only helps the community but also creates a pipeline of talent aligned with our values from an early age. Amy, your ideas are not only innovative but also perfectly aligned with the direction we want for the company. Encouraged by Henry's support, Amy detailed the plan further, discussing possible obstacles and solutions. I also thought about how this could be funded. Part of the profits from our new line of eco-friendly products could be reinvested in these community programs. This shows solid financial planning behind your idea. Let's do this, Amy. Let's turn this vision into reality, affirmed Henry, already thinking about how they would present the project to the board for approval. In the following months, Amy worked tirelessly to implement these initiatives. She met with community leaders, school principals, and sustainability experts to ensure that every aspect of the program was successful. Under her leadership, the company not only began to positively impact the environment, but also strengthened its connection with the local community. The changes Amy was promoting did not go unnoticed. She began to be recognized as an emerging leader in corporate social responsibility, giving talks and participating in panels on the subject. Her journey from cleaner to social impact leader became a powerful example of human potential for growth and change. As Amy reflected on her progress, she felt not only gratitude for Henry's trust and support, but also a deep personal satisfaction for making a difference. She knew the work was just beginning, but she was ready to face future challenges, armed with knowledge, experience, and a robust support network. As daylight flooded Henry's office with the golden glow of a new dawn, he allowed himself a moment of reflection. The large windows offered a spectacular view of the awakening city, a visual reminder of the endless possibilities that each new day brought. Sitting in his chair, he pondered the journey he had traversed, a saga of betrayal, redemption, and growth that had reshaped not just his company, but his own life. "You look contemplative this morning," Amy commented, entering the office with a stack of documents, but with a perceptive smile. "You look like a man who has conquered the world." Henry laughed, welcoming Amy's light-heartedness. "More like a man who has seen the world in every possible way and still finds reasons to love it. Amy, we did more than survive. We thrived and set a new course for Smith Enterprises." "That's true," Amy agreed, placing the documents on the desk. "And to think where we started. It's almost surreal, isn't it?" Henry nodded, his eyes sweeping across the office that now symbolized so much more than just a workplace. "Exactly. And it's here, in this new dawn, that I see the true value of what we've built. Not just in balance sheets or annual reports, but in the lives we've impacted, the policies we've reformed, and the culture we've cultivated." Amy, feeling a mix of pride and responsibility, added, "And it's a testament to what true leadership can achieve, Henry. You didn't just lead with strategy, but with heart. And I've learned that integrity isn't just about doing the right thing when everyone's watching, but maintaining that line, even when the world seems against you. Your transformation from a cleaner to an essential leader in this company is one of the most inspiring stories I've had the honor to be part of," Henry said sincerely. "You are proof that true leadership comes from the ability to see beyond adversities, turning challenges into stepping stones for success." Nodding, Amy smiled, feeling energized by Henry's words and the journey they had shared. "And now, as we look to the future, what challenges do you see on the horizon, Henry?" Henry stood up, moving closer to the window, a gesture Amy recognized as a sign of deep thought. "The future? Well, the future is about sustainability, not just environmental, but in our business practices. We will continue to innovate, expand responsibly, and ensure every decision reflects our commitment to ethics and excellence. And, of course, continue building a team that shares these values." Amy nodded, fully aligned with Henry's vision. "I'm ready for whatever comes, and I know with you leading the way, these challenges will be just new opportunities for us." "Then let a new chapter begin," Henry declared, a spark of determination in his eyes. "A chapter where Smith Enterprises not only leads in innovation and integrity, but also serves as a beacon of hope and an example of what is possible when courage and leadership meet." With this spirit of renewal and possibility, Henry and Amy continued to plan, ready to face whatever the future held. Each project was not just a step towards the growth of the company, but also a step towards strengthening a community, a market, and ultimately, a better world. This new dawn was not just a symbol of new beginnings, but a constant reminder of the progress they had made and would continue to make.
So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support and see you in the next videos.